comedy? What is it? Where is it? Why is it? These are all questions. My name is Spencer Acciarito. I am an unemployed 17-year-old who wants to be a stand-up comedian, so obviously I'm way overqualified for this. However, I do have a lot of experience with comedy. I've done 3 stand-up routines on this very stage, all of which were wildly unsuccessful. I write political satire every week, and I send it to over 100 people who presumably don't read it. I've watched every single episode of Friends, The Office, and How I Met Your Mother. I look funny. I smell funny. I eat food. So, comedy is a very big part of my life. And because of that, I want to share with you some things that I've learned about it. I want to talk about, firstly, what it is, and secondly, how it can be used to empower us both in society and in my own personal experience. So, firstly, we need to know what comedy is. Well, comedy is a subcategory of humor. So what is humor? Well, it's complicated. Humor is one of those things that you can't ever really understand, like love or Eric Trump. Plato defined humor as the mixture of pleasure and pain that lies in the malice of amusement. Like, what? No. Humor is just a way of looking at things. We have a sense of humor because humor is a sense. Just like seeing or hearing things, humor is the scope through which we see the world, and it's different for each person. Nothing is universally funny. Now, humor can be created in 2 ways. It can be created naturally, like when your friend falls down the stairs, or it can be created unnaturally, like when you push your friend down the stairs. And that second way, that's what comedy is. Comedy is content that is created by humans and is intended to be humorous. For example, a baby elephant sneezing is very humorous. That's very funny, but it's not comedy because it didn't occur with the intention of being humorous. Now, that's a huge oversimplification of what humor and comedy is, but I think we now kind of have a gist of what it is, and we can move on with what it has to do with today's theme of empowerment. And quite frankly, comedy actually has more to do with the opposite of empowerment, which is depowerment, and we are all going to collectively pretend that's a word, okay? So, when you look at comedy, you don't have to look very far to see that comedy can take power away from people. SNL, for example, SNL lampoons real-world people like the president, and through a deeply witty irreverence, it humanizes these seemingly untouchable people, and thus it strips them of their power. But comedy does more than just take away power, because, well, humor me for a second, pun intended. I want you to imagine that power is a finite substance, like mass, okay? Power is like mass, and mass can neither be created nor destroyed, right? We all know that from physics or whatever. So power is the same. When comedy takes power away from someone, that power doesn't just disappear. When it takes away power, it simultaneously redistributes that power to other people, thus empowering them. So with depowerment comes empowerment, and unfortunately, vice versa. When you look at something like minstrel shows in the 1800s that attempted to dehumanize African Americans through blackface and stereotypical farce, you see that comedy can be used both morally and immorally. And just like humor, it's all a matter of perspective. Now, finally, I want to talk about the most important perspective of them all, mine. So I want to tell you how comedy has empowered me and what, not who, it took power away from in order to do that. So here we go. I have depression. I have clinical depression. And before you ask, yes, it's a lot of fun. Now, for the longest time, I had a lot of trouble making jokes about my depression, and that was new for me because I'm the kind of guy who can make jokes about anything, including and especially things that probably shouldn't be joked about. But for some reason, I couldn't with my depression, and that was not only scary, but it was also a little bit saddening. Now, I don't know what changed, and I've had depression since about freshman year, and I don't know what happened in between then and a few months ago, but for some reason, a few months ago, I had this eureka moment, and I was able to write 2 different stand-up routines about my depression. And I haven't performed them yet, but I have shown them to people, and it's received pretty positive reviews. And that's very encouraging, because once I was able to laugh at my depression, it gave me power over it, and that made me feel awesome. Now, I'm not trying to tell you that I used comedy to cure my depression. It didn't. Pills did. Lots and lots of pills. But I am saying that comedy is a tool that is often overlooked and can be used for very, very, very good reasons, such as getting over something like mental illness. So, in conclusion, comedy is something that we use almost every day. Every time we tell a joke, every time we watch something that's funny, we experience it all the time, and yet we often overlook it. We often equate it with something as meaningless as puns or just jokes, but comedy is so much more than that. It is a tool that can be used to empower people, and once you recognize that, you yourself have a lot of power, and with power comes responsibility, and that's no joke. Thank you.